Okay guys, on this video, I'm going to share with you my experience on acquiring a digital nomad visa here in Colombia in case anyone out there is interested and wants to learn more about the process. So to start, every country has its different set of restrictions and regulations regarding how long you can stay on a foreign country. I'm a US citizen and US citizens can stay up to 180 calendar years in Colombia, but you cannot stay more than 90 days at a time. You can extend this if you go to an immigration office in the country itself, but typically you can only stay up to 90 days at a time. Then you have to leave the country, come back in, and then you can stay another 90 days. Up to 180 on a calendar year. When I moved to Colombia last year, I moved in around July, first week of July, right after 4th of July. From July to December is 6 months, which is 180 days. So this was very deliberate because I was aware of the time constraints I had because I didn't have a visa and I wanted to stay in the country, like finish out the whole year. With that, I also knew that once January 1st came around, the days reset. So on January, I would get a new batch of 180 days, which I knew would allow me to stay up to a year in Colombia without having a visa. This would all be on my tourist visa. You know, complying with the 90-day periods, going out and coming back in, which I use to visit family or just, take a small trip to the US to wrap up some things. But in general, for US citizens, that's how it is. Now, of course, I had already plans to stay in the country beyond that. And for that, to do that legally, you need a visa. And the route that I decided to pursue was a digital nomad visa. Before the whole thing started, or before the whole process started, I thought this was something that was extremely complicated, or at least very hard to get, because in my experience, when I lived in the US, I've heard the other side of the story. I've met a bunch of immigrants, Mexicans, Venezuelans, Cubans, Colombians, who have always mentioned how much of a nightmare the visa process is for them to actually get a visa to allow them to stay in the US. So that was like my benchmark. That was my frame of what to expect regarding the visa. Keep in mind, without me having done any prior research. This was when I originally moved. So that was the expectation. I thought, okay, this is going to be a long process. It's going to be drawn out. There's no guarantee from the looks of it, but I was going to try anyways, regardless. I officially have my visa now, and I want to at least let you know that in my experience, it was not like that at all. And I am aware that I can understand why it would be easier, or at least the process would be shorter the other way around, if you're a US citizen trying to get a visa in Colombia. So essentially, I worked with a lawyer firm who helped with most of the process. The price range for them accompanying me through the whole process, helping out with the paperwork, making sure I complied with all the requirements, filing the application, everything. It ranges between 700 and 1,000 USD. That was about what I paid. And initially, they mentioned that the visa process can take up to from anywhere between 1 to 3 months. Uh, in my case, it took way less than that. But keep in mind, I had all the documentation ready. I was already briefed on the requirements, and before starting the process, I had made sure that I complied with all of them. I just needed some additional paperwork from the lawyers to comply with immigration laws here. But overall, after developing a relationship with the lawyers, I've learned that it's really typically it's very normal, or I should say, it's very uncommon for a visa to get denied or rejected, especially if it's one like an easier. So there's different types of visas, and some are of a higher tier than others, and that usually means that the period for which the visa is valid is longer, could be up to 3 years. The digital nomad one is fairly easy or relatively easy to get, especially if you're working remote. And essentially, as long as you comply with all the documentations and you have a strong case meaning you can prove that you can sustain yourself, the company that you're working for is legally incorporated in the US, and that you won't be doing any sketchy stuff, basically, then there's a very high chance that you'll get accepted. And the lawyers have also shared that in their experience, the reason why most foreigners that come to Colombia and don't stay or don't apply to the visa is because they also have a similar expectation as I did when I first started, that they think it's super complicated or extremely hard to get approved, that they just don't even try at all. And it's interesting to hear that and know that, considering my experience here. So if you're someone who is considering moving to Colombia or just visiting, if you never visited, I'd suggest you visit first, see if you like it, explore a bit. There's a lot of countries in the world, but this one at the moment I'm particularly fond of. And it might not be as hard as you think to you know take a leap of faith and move to a completely new country and start a new life. It's completely possible, especially now with the rise of AI and all these different ways to make money online. You can definitely take advantage of those opportunities, and if you find a place that has a or has the potential to give you a higher quality of life purely because you're taking advantage of economies at scale, then it's something I would recommend you to do, as long as you are considerate with whatever country it is that you decide to move into. And mainly because there are really no prices for playing the game on hard mode, like making things harder for yourself, living on a super expensive country with a high tax rate. There's really no benefit. You can literally improve your quality of life and improve your happiness just by moving somewhere else. In general, just things to keep in mind. And also, if you guys have any additional questions regarding the process or things that I left out or that you're generally interested in, just feel free to leave a comment below. I'll get to it as soon as I can. And yeah, that's just me sharing my experience. Because no matter how much I read, I I still assume, whenever you're dealing with governments, it's always a long, drawn out process, and sometimes it can be. But that was my experience, and just sharing this in case it can help someone out, or at least clear doubts if you are actually in the process of getting a visa here in Colombia. So with that said, thank you for watching, appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.